The following program contains the views and opinions of the hosts, speakers, and participants. They do not reflect the policies of the producers, advisors, and advertisers of AU's Paws Radio. Its advisors, advertisers, nor the position of Adelphi University, the Board of Trustees, administrative faculty, or its affiliates. Paws web radio station encourages freedom of speech but does not endorse any specific viewpoints or messages. Listener discretion is advised, especially for potentially sensitive or controversial topics. Hello and welcome back to Inner Monologue. My name is Tayla, and this is my podcast where we chat, we rant about things, and we have fun. Today, I thought I'd talk a little bit about burnout, because I feel like I've been noticing a lot of interesting things recently about my own mind and I guess how I handle that and anything like that. I touched on this a little bit in season 1 of my podcast, which is on my Spotify account. It's Inner Monologue with Tayla. You can check that out anytime you want. But I feel like now's a good time to talk about it. We are in a strange part of the semester. We are a little bit into it, not far enough that it's finals, getting kind of close to midterms. I thought it would be a good time, especially because I am a performing arts major. I'm a theater major, so burnout is something that I feel like I kind of fear a lot, because I think the way my mind works is if I'm burnt out with something I love so much, then what was the point? Which isn't necessarily the correct way to think of it. I'm just like, that's just how my brain works. But I want to talk about this also because I feel like right now I'm not fearing burnout as much as I usually do. And I think it's because I'm kind of just letting myself exist and see what happens. And also, like, actively engaging myself in other things. Like, I'm doing Paws Radio. Here I am, doing my little podcast. And even though I feel like I'm a very career-driven person, I am doing a lot of different things to get me to where I want to be, to, like, satisfy the part of my brain that wants to constantly be working towards something, but also enjoying myself. A lot of content creators, especially in theater, have been talking recently about having dreams outside of performing and outside of Broadway and things like that. And I think that's really helpful. Like, for me, I do have other dreams that are a part of theater and that are part of, I guess, performing overall, but they're kind of more behind the scenes too. Like, something I would love to do is direct a production of Mean Girls. That has nothing to do with me performing, but it's something that I'm like, okay, I'm in a directing class right now. That's something I could work toward, and that doesn't have to do with me performing 24/7. I've also just been writing songs and doing a lot of other things that make me happy, rather than just performing all the time. I also feel like I'm more passionate and motivated if I'm actively working on a project that motivates me and that I want to be a part of, rather than just like, oh, this is something I'm doing to keep up with, like, practicing and to just keep me performing. Stuff like that usually makes me feel like, ugh, like, I don't want to do this. But I was just in a short, like, 1-act play that was written in the 1920s, and it was an all-female cast, and that was something I was insanely passionate about because it's a really important time period for women, and it was cool to work on a period piece from that time, and that made me so happy, and I did not feel burnt out or like, ugh, I don't want to do this. It was really great for me, and that's kind of when I noticed, like, okay, it's because I was passionate about this project. And I know it's hard to do that in college because, especially if you're a performing arts major of any sort, you're just constantly given things, or it's mandatory to audition for things. And for me, I'm kind of just trying to find the balance with that and kind of just figuring out, like, okay, if I do get cast in something in the future that, like, I really don't want to be cast in, how can I make this an opportunity that I'm passionate about? How can I make this something that I'm not going to feel burnt out doing? How can I make this something more enjoyable? Right now I'm in this really good space that I'm very grateful for. I just closed my show, and we do have 2 more performances of it, one for a high school and one at a theater in Brooklyn, because we're doing it in partnership with a theater ensemble that has a series called Expand the Canon and digs up old plays and looks at them through a gender expansive lens, which I think is really cool. So that's giving me a lot of opportunities with this show, but also like breaks in between. And I'm not in the next show that I had to audition for because I wasn't allowed to because I was in this show. So it's giving me a lot of time to just kind of like enjoy where I'm at, do other things. I've been reading so many plays, and that's something I've always wanted to do. I'm not much of a reader at all, but all of a sudden I read like 5 plays this past week because like when I start to feel like, okay, like I'm done with reading, I realize I'm like halfway through and I'm like, okay, I have to finish it now, which is a really important thing for me, and also a really great way for me to just like consume some sort of media while also doing something that can help me in my career. Anyway, that was a really long just ramble about things, but moral of the story is do things that fill your cup. Is that the term? The quote, fill your cup, fill your plate. Do things that make you happy. Whether it's advancing you in some way or not, you deserve to just do things that make you happy sometimes for no reason. Be around people that make you happy. Be around people that aren't constantly negative or bringing you down, because that will burn you out of anything, no matter how much you love it. I also feel like there's this sort of like stigma with burnout where it's kind of like, oh, like if you get burnt out with this thing, you don't love it enough, or like you shouldn't be doing it, or if you love something else too, even if it's not as much, then do that instead. And that's so not true. Like, that is so not true. There are limited days, there's a limited amount of time on this earth. If you have multiple dreams, go for all of them. Whatever makes you feel the happiest. And also, if you don't finish some of them, if you don't achieve some of them, things change. People change. I feel like there's just such pressure on us as humans to like pick one thing, love it, do it, achieve it, and that's it. But like there's so much more than that. And also burnout is just such a normal human, I don't know, reaction to things that happen, and just to, you know, doing too much, not sleeping enough, not eating enough, anything. So I hate that there's such a stigma around it, especially I feel like with performers, because in a lot of BFA programs, not the one that I'm in actually, but in a lot of other ones, I know people who have been told, oh, if you even think of wanting to do anything else, go do that instead, because then you're not made for this. Like, what? Having a lot of things that you want to do in your life can actually be really helpful and just make your life more fulfilling. So I kind of hate all of that. But anyway, I've just been seeing a lot on social media of like people talking about this recently. So I was like, why not talk about it in my podcast? But hey, it is what it is. Anyway, if you were listening to this and you have any prompts or questions or things that you want me to talk about in a future episode, that would be super helpful, and I would love if you could send them to me. you can send them through Paws Radio and just say for Tayla's podcast or for Inner Monologue, and I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week.